Blueprints is so close to perfection. At only 5 hours into this game, it became clear to me that this was going to be my game of the year, and it would easily take its place among some of my favorite games of all time. Blueprints is a game that's best played blind. This video contains no major spoilers, and all the footage you see is going to be of the first few days. I will be discussing some of the rooms that show up in the mansion, and none of them I believe will be a significant spoiler. But nevertheless, if you wanted to play this game with no knowledge at all, you should probably wait to watch this video. With that out of the way, let's get into the critique. So, the core game loop of Blueprints focuses around building a house room by room. Every time you go through a closed door, you get to choose between 3 rooms to enter, gradually building the house like a big jigsaw puzzle. If you run out of steps, or if you box yourself into a dead end, you'll have to call it a day. And since this is a roguelite, starting a new day means you lose all of your items and you have to start building the house from scratch again. Your primary goal in Blueprints is to reach the elusive room 46, a goal which seems daunting at first, but will become more and more feasible as you start to understand how the rooms work, and begin to unravel the overarching mystery of the game. At first, this game loop is phenomenal. Even if you have a bad run, you probably still learned something, either about a puzzle or just about how the house works. For the first 10 to 15 hours, I was completely enthralled by this game. I had completed the main objective, and I was starting to unravel the larger mysteries lurking beneath the game's surface. This is, unfortunately, where the cracks started to show. The problem with Blueprints is not a complicated one. It's all about randomness, or RNG, if you're a gamer. Now don't get me wrong, I think RNG is a good thing in this type of game. A roguelite without randomness is like a pizza without cheese. It's an essential aspect of the genre, and without it the game wouldn't work. The randomness of this game is part of what makes it so fun to play. When I talk to my friends about their playthroughs, I'm always shocked to learn what things they discovered, and in what order. Each player is provided a truly unique game experience, which is exceptionally rare for what is essentially a puzzle game. But with that in mind, what the game really needs are more mechanics to control that randomness. As it stands, there are some pretty good items and rooms which help with that, but the issue is that a lot of these things are also dependent on randomness, which means if you run into some bad luck, you can have a very frustrating experience with this game. Let me give you a couple of examples. So there's this room in the house called the boiler room. It's a big steam engine which provides power to adjacent rooms. There are a handful of puzzles in this game that require you to connect the boiler room to other rooms. And these are puzzles which you become aware of really early on. For me, I was not able to successfully connect the boiler room to anywhere else until nearly 10 hours into my playthrough, and that was for only one of the required combinations. Even now, over 20 hours into my playthrough, I am still trying to connect the boiler room to a particular location in order to solve a puzzle. At one point, I spent 5 hours straight just trying to connect these 2 rooms, and I just didn't draw things in the right order. Another example of RNG-dependent progression has to do with items. So, there are physical items in this game, such as the magnifying glass or shovel, which are required to solve a number of puzzles. Now, in the early game, it's not terribly hard to get these items, so no big deal. However, later on in the game, you eventually have to combine items in a room called the workshop. The workshop is not guaranteed to appear, and likewise, the items you will need to combine in the workshop aren't guaranteed either. These 2 factors combine in such a way where you can completely lack the tools to solve puzzles unless you get a very specific combination of items. This alone wouldn't be too bad, except that, remember, you lose all of your items at the start of the day. So let's make up a hypothetical situation to demonstrate just how frustrating this can be. Let's say you need to combine a shovel and a sledgehammer to make a shove hammer. In order to make the shove hammer, you need to pick up both of these items, which are dependent on RNG. If you manage to get the shovel and the hammer, you'll then need to draft the workshop, which also requires RNG. And for context, over the course of my first 50 days, I had drafted the workshop only 5 times. Now with that in mind, let's say you get the shovel, the sledgehammer, and the workshop. You finally craft the shove hammer. Now, since you've been doing a great job of keeping a journal and looking out for clues, you know you need to bring the shove hammer to the gymnasium to break open the basketball so you can find a special key. Unfortunately, you spent all of your time getting the shovel, the sledgehammer, the workshop, and the gymnasium, and now you don't have enough steps to even make it to the gymnasium with the shove hammer. You desperately try to think of some way to make it there, but you run out of steps. You are forced to end the day, you lose all of your items and progress, and you have to pray you get that lucky again. Now, early in the game, this is a little frustrating, but usually you're at least making progress on other things, so it's not as big of a deal. Later in the game, however, your list of things you can work on is getting smaller and smaller, and you are more and more just praying to get the right combination of things in the right order so you can make progress. Now that I've illustrated these problems with RNG, let me propose some solutions. Number 1. Pity timers. So for certain puzzles, such as room combinations like I mentioned with the boiler room, I think if you haven't drafted those 2 required rooms by a certain day, the game should ramp up the odds of drawing them consecutively. For instance, if you haven't gotten the boiler room and the laboratory by day 60, it should be more or less guaranteed you'll get them on a given run. I think pity timers like this would be especially useful for rooms or upgrades that help alleviate the game's inherent RNG. Or, using our previous example, if you haven't gotten the shovel, hammer, workshop, and gymnasium all at once, you should start increasing the odds of them appearing in any given run. Number 2. A permanent coat check. In Blueprints, there's this cool room called the coat check that lets you deposit any item from your current run, and the next time you draft that room, the item will still be there. This is a good room, but it's severely kneecapped by RNG. You're not guaranteed to draw the coat check. There have been many times where I've either needed an item from the coat check, or I wanted to store an item in it, and I just didn't get lucky enough to draft it. I think at a certain point in the game, you should unlock the ability either to have a permanent coat check near the entrance hall, or some other way to more reliably draft it so that when you get lucky combining items together, you can bring them into another day and avoid the frustration of losing everything. I think this would be best placed as a late game upgrade, because early on I think it would be a bit too overpowered to always have the items you want. Number 3, permanent item unlocks. This one is a bit out there, but I think in the late game, and I mean like the really late game, it would be great if you could make certain items permanent. It would be something that's hard to do, maybe it costs like 200 gold or something crazy. That way, when you're on day 100, you're not still getting your run ruined because you can't find a shovel. Now, with those suggestions out there, I want to stress that the randomness of this game is part of what makes it so fun and addictive. But as a fan of roguelites, I know all too well that the fun of randomness does begin to wear off, especially when you know what you need but just can't get it. Anything added to the game which reduces its randomness needs to be carefully paced. Too soon, and you risk neutering the game loop. Too late, and you risk players becoming so frustrated that they stopped playing entirely. Now, with all that in mind, I think these issues I brought up would be less aggravating if not for a secondary problem the Blueprints has. Now, I know I said that RNG was the only real problem with the game, and I do think that it is the fundamental issue, but there is a secondary factor at work here which amplifies the frustration of bad RNG, and that factor is tempo. So, tempo is a musical term which essentially means speed, but I think it's relevant here as we think about the rhythm of this game. In most pieces of music, the tempo is consistent. The song is going to remain the same speed all the way through. If it slows down or speeds up, it has to be for the right reason and at the right time. Otherwise, you risk interrupting the flow of the song and taking the listener out of it. Games work in the same way. You need to establish a consistent pace to keep the player engaged. You need to keep them in a flow state. Blueprints is full of changes in tempo. The vast majority of them come in the form of puzzles and clues. Now, this game is packed full of layers upon layers of puzzles. Early on, you're going to be finding clues for puzzles in just about every room you walk into. The game expects you to keep a thorough journal of anything that might be a clue, so you're going to have to frequently stop to take notes. Now, for the most part, I don't have any problem with the tempo of clues or puzzles. Most clues you only need to take notes on once. The only exception I would make about journaling would be that I think anytime you pick up a book or piece of paper, it should be permanently added to some menu that you can access at any time. Taking pictures of every piece of paper you come across and making notes on where you found it really quickly becomes annoying and it feels unnecessary. But puzzles aside, my main issues with tempo have to do with interactables and backtracking. So when you get into the late game, you're going to be moving through runs a lot more quickly. You're not going to be walking carefully through every room. You're going to be beelining to the next door, hoping you can get the right room that you've been looking for. Now, when you're moving quickly like this, anything that slows you down causes a lot of friction. Unfortunately, there are a lot of interactable objects, such as safes and computers, which take an unbearably long time to work with when you're trying to move quickly. The slow interface of the computer is cool and immersive at first, but when it's your 50th time in the security room and you have to navigate that interface, it slows your run to a crawl. It breaks up the tempo for no reason, and that can be really frustrating. In a similar vein, the first time you open a safe, it's thrilling, but the 30th time you do it, you start wondering why you have to stop and enter the code manually again. This is further aggravated by the fact that this game requires a lot of backtracking, and unfortunately, your little boy legs do not move very fast even when you're sprinting. Again, at first, the slow pace is helpful at noticing clues, but later on, it very quickly feels inappropriate for how much you need to move from one room to another. Again, if this was a game where you could get all of the content done in 30 or so in-game days, then this wouldn't be such a big deal. But if you're going to be doing 100 or more runs, you need to be able to speed things up. So my solutions here are simple. First, anything you have to manually interact with every time you're in a run should be sped up, such as computer terminals. Or if it's something like a safe, you should just have it spawn open every time after you've unlocked it for the first time. There's no reason to waste the player's time with repetitive tasks or animations. Hell, I think even the introductory cutscene where you slowly zoom into the house should be sped up or even removed entirely past a certain day. As a general rule, if it happens once, you can make it slow, but if it happens over and over again, you need to speed it up or skip it entirely. My second solution is to increase the sprinting speed. Either add an unlock that permanently increases the speed of the player, or let the player manually set the speed of their walking and sprinting states. Personally, I would have my walking speed be the current sprint speed, and make my sprinting speed at least twice as fast as it is now. To wrap this all up, the problems with tempo I've described are secondary to RNG. If the game's RNG wasn't so brutal, you wouldn't have nearly as much frustration with tempo problems. I didn't realize how slow some things were until I was constantly repeating my runs because of bad RNG. To return to the music metaphor, even the best song in the world can be tarnished by too many loops. If Blueprints could implement these solutions, if the RNG could be reined in and the tempo could be made more consistent, then I truly believe it could be a perfect game. But as a final disclaimer, I haven't fully completed this game yet. I'm well past the main objective and I'm pretty damn far in, but I haven't solved all of the puzzles yet. Maybe some of my complaints do get addressed. Maybe I just haven't unlocked the right things. Maybe I just need to have the right item in the right room at the right time. But if that is the case, then there's nothing I can blame but my luck. And unfortunately, the more I play Blueprints, the less lucky I feel. That's the video. I am absolutely in love with this game. I've got like 20 pages of handwritten notes and I am still learning new things. But enough about me. What do you think? Do you think the RNG is unfair? Am I missing something? Do you have a better solution? Let me know in the comments. And if you liked the video, please leave a like or subscribe to the channel, it really means a lot to me. But regardless, thank you for watching all the way through, and I look forward to seeing you again on the next video. Bye bye!